Have you ever looked at your life and quietly asked yourself, why is this happening to me? Maybe you tried your best to be a good person. You showed kindness when you could have chosen anger. You helped people when you were the one who needed help. You stayed loyal when others walked away. You gave your love, your time, and your heart. Yet somehow, life still brought you pain. Maybe you lost someone you deeply loved. Maybe someone you trusted broke your heart. Maybe you worked hard for years, only to watch everything fall apart. And somewhere deep inside, a painful question started to grow. Why do good people suffer? It can feel unfair, can't it? You look around and see people who hurt others, people who act without compassion, people who seem to get everything they want. While those who try to live with kindness are left carrying invisible wounds. So you begin to wonder. Is kindness a weakness? Does doing the right thing even matter? Or is life simply a place where good people are forced to suffer? But what if the pain you are experiencing does not mean that life has abandoned you? What if suffering is not a punishment? What if the very thing that is breaking your heart right now is also carrying a message that could transform the way you see yourself, your life, and the world around you? Thousands of years ago, one person looked deeply into the nature of human suffering and discovered an answer that has helped millions of people find peace. His name was Buddha. And his understanding of why good people suffer may completely change the way you see your own pain. Sometimes, the hardest pain in life is not the pain itself. It is the feeling that your pain does not make sense. You can understand that life is difficult. You can accept that everyone faces challenges. But what hurts the most is when you feel like you did everything you were supposed to do, and life still chose to hurt you. Maybe you were the person who always showed up for others. The one your friends called when they needed someone to listen. The one who stayed calm when everyone else was angry. The one who forgave even when forgiveness was difficult. You tried to be patient. You tried to be honest. You tried to treat people with love and respect. But then one day, you found yourself sitting alone, wondering, why am I the one going through this? Maybe you know this feeling. The feeling of lying awake at night while the world is quiet. But your mind refuses to rest. Replaying conversations. Remembering moments that hurt you. Thinking about the choices you made. Wondering if you could have done something differently. You smile during the day because you do not want anyone to worry. You tell people, I'm okay. But deep inside, you are carrying questions that nobody else can see. Why did this happen to me? Why did someone who tried to love deserve to be hurt? Why did someone who worked so hard still lose everything? These are not small questions. These are the questions that keep people awake in the darkest moments of their lives. Because when suffering arrives, it does not only bring pain. It often brings confusion. It makes us question our beliefs. It makes us question ourselves. And sometimes, it even makes us question whether being a good person matters at all. Think about someone who spent years building a life with another person. They gave their love. They sacrificed. They believed they had found someone who would stay forever. Then one day, that relationship ended. And they are left standing among the pieces of a life they thought they understood. Or think about someone who worked every day, gave everything they had to their career, tried to provide for their family, and suddenly lost their job. The loss is not only financial. The deeper pain is the feeling of rejection. The feeling of asking, was everything I gave not enough? Or maybe it is the loss of someone you loved. A person who was part of your daily life. Someone whose voice, presence, and smile made the world feel safer. And then suddenly, they are gone. No explanation can completely remove that emptiness. No simple words can immediately heal that kind of wound. This is why suffering feels so heavy. Because we do not only experience pain. We create a story around that pain. We tell ourselves, my life is unfair. I must have done something wrong. Maybe I am not meant to be happy. Maybe good things only happen to other people. And slowly, without even realizing it, the pain outside of us begins to become pain inside of us. A person can survive a difficult moment, but carrying the belief that they are alone in that moment can feel unbearable. Many people spend years fighting battles nobody knows about. They carry disappointment behind their smiles. They carry fear behind their success. They carry sadness behind their kindness. And the hardest part? They often believe they have to carry it alone. But perhaps the deepest question is not only, why do good people suffer? Perhaps there is another question hidden beneath it. What is suffering trying to show us about life, about ourselves, and about the way we hold on to the things we love? Because sometimes the greatest transformation does not begin when our pain disappears. Sometimes it begins when we finally learn to understand it. For a long time, many of us carry a belief that feels natural. If something painful happens to us, it must mean something has gone wrong. If we suffer, we think we have failed. If we lose something important, we think life has taken something away from us. If we experience hardship, we often ask, why me? But what if this question, as understandable as it is, keeps us trapped inside our pain? What if suffering is not always a sign that life is against us? What if pain is not always here to destroy us, but sometimes here to reveal something we could not see before? Think about a seed buried deep beneath the ground. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. It is covered by darkness. It is surrounded by pressure. It is completely hidden from the world. If that seed could feel, perhaps it would wonder, why am I being buried? Why am I being placed in darkness? Why is life making things so difficult for me? But what the seed does not know is that the darkness is not the end of its story. The pressure is not proof that it has been forgotten. The struggle beneath the ground is part of becoming something greater. And sometimes, human beings are like that seed. During the hardest seasons of our lives, we often cannot see beyond the moment we are living in. We only see the loss. We only see the disappointment. We only see the door that closed. But we cannot yet see what that experience may be teaching us. This does not mean every painful event is good. It does not mean we should pretend that heartbreak does not hurt. It does not mean we should smile when we are suffering. Pain is real. Loss is real. Grief is real. But perhaps there is a difference between experiencing pain and allowing pain to convince us that we are broken. Because sometimes the deepest wound is not what happened to us. The deepest wound is the story we create afterward. I will never be happy again. I will never trust anyone again. My life will always be this way. These thoughts can become another burden we carry. Like holding a heavy stone in our hands and forgetting that we are allowed to put it down. Imagine someone holding a piece of broken glass. At first, they hold it because it represents something important. A memory. A relationship. A dream. Something they once loved. But the longer they hold it, the deeper it cuts into their hand. The glass itself is not changing. The pain comes from refusing to release what is hurting them. Many of us do this with our suffering. We hold tightly to the past. We hold tightly to the way we think life should have been. We hold tightly to the idea that happiness can only come when everything returns to the way it was. And without realizing it,
we continue hurting ourselves over something that has already happened. But what if healing does not begin by changing the past? What if healing begins by changing our relationship with the present? What if peace does not come from controlling every moment of life, but from learning how to meet each moment with wisdom and compassion? This is a difficult idea to accept. Because when we are hurting, we naturally want answers. We want someone to explain why it happened. We want someone to tell us when the pain will end. We want a guarantee that we will never suffer again. But life does not always offer certainty. Life changes. People change. Circumstances change. The things we love can change. And perhaps the greatest source of our suffering is not simply that life changes, but that we desperately try to hold on to what was never meant to remain exactly the same. For thousands of years, people have struggled with these same questions. Why does suffering exist? Why do kind people experience hardship? How can we find peace in a world that constantly changes? And one person looked deeply into these questions. He did not turn away from human suffering. He did not ignore pain. He did not tell people to simply accept their struggles and move on. Instead, he spent his life understanding the human heart and discovering a different way to relate to suffering. A way that would help people find peace even when life was not perfect. His name was Buddha. And his answer begins with a simple but powerful truth. That suffering itself is not always the enemy. Sometimes, the way we hold our suffering is what creates the deepest pain. For thousands of years, people have asked the same painful question. Why do good people suffer? Why do kind hearts experience heartbreak? Why do honest people face betrayal? Why do those who try to live with compassion still encounter loss, disappointment, and pain? The Buddha looked deeply into this question. And what he discovered was not an answer that blamed people for their suffering. He did not say, "You are suffering because you are a bad person." He did not say, "Pain means you have failed." Instead, he saw something much deeper about the human experience. He saw that suffering is a part of being alive. Everyone experiences change. Everyone experiences loss. Everyone experiences moments when life does not go according to their wishes. The difference is not that some people suffer and others do not. The difference is how we understand and hold that suffering. Imagine a person walking through a forest carrying a heavy backpack. At first, the backpack feels manageable. But as the journey continues, they begin adding more and more stones. One stone for every disappointment. One stone for every regret. One stone for every painful memory. One stone for every moment they ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Eventually, the weight becomes unbearable. The person begins to believe the problem is the journey itself. But perhaps the deeper question is, which stones have you been carrying that you were never meant to carry forever? The Buddha taught that much of our suffering comes from our struggle against the reality of life. We suffer when we believe, "This should not have happened. This person should not have left. I should not have failed. My life should look different by now." Of course, it is natural to feel this way. When we lose something we love, our heart naturally reaches backward. We want the past to return. We want life to give back what it took away. But life is always moving. Like a river, it continues flowing whether we are ready or not. If we try to stop the river with our hands, we only exhaust ourselves. But when we learn to move with the river, we discover a different kind of strength. This does not mean we stop caring. It does not mean we become cold. It does not mean we no longer love deeply. The Buddha never taught people to stop loving. He taught people to love with wisdom. Because there is a difference between love and attachment. Love says, "I want you to be happy." Attachment says, "I need you to stay exactly as I want, because without you I cannot be whole." Love creates freedom. Attachment creates fear. And often, the deepest pain comes when we try to hold tightly to things that are naturally changing. A flower is beautiful because it blooms for a season. A sunset is precious because it does not last forever. A moment becomes meaningful because it passes. The Buddha invited people to see life in this way. Not as something we must control perfectly, but as something we can learn to fully experience. Perhaps the reason good people suffer is not because they are being punished. Perhaps suffering is one of the ways life teaches us to wake up. To become more compassionate. To become more patient. To understand the hearts of others who are also carrying invisible pain. Think about someone who has experienced deep loss. Before the loss, they may have walked past another person's sadness without fully understanding. But after their own heartbreak, they see the world differently. They become gentler. They become more understanding. Their pain, although difficult, opened a door to a deeper kind of compassion. This is not because suffering is something we should seek. No one needs to invite pain into their life. But when pain arrives, we have a choice. We can allow it to close our hearts. Or we can allow it to deepen our understanding. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that our suffering is not the complete story of who we are. The pain you experience today is a chapter. It is not the entire book. The loss you carry is a moment in time. It is not the definition of your life. And perhaps the greatest freedom begins when we stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What can this experience teach me about love, about life, and about myself?" Because sometimes, the same experience that breaks our heart can also become the doorway through which we discover a stronger, wiser, and more peaceful version of ourselves. After understanding this, perhaps the most important question is not, "How can I make sure I never suffer again?" Because life will always bring moments we cannot control. People will change. Situations will change. Some chapters will end, even when we wish they would continue. The deeper question is, how can I learn to meet life with a peaceful heart? This is where healing begins. Not when every problem disappears. Not when the past is erased. Not when everyone finally understands us. Healing begins when we stop fighting against the fact that we are human. You are allowed to have painful moments. You are allowed to miss someone. You are allowed to feel disappointed. You are allowed to grieve what you have lost. The Buddha's wisdom does not ask you to become someone who never feels pain. It invites you to become someone who can hold pain with kindness. Think about a person comforting a small child who is crying. They do not say, "Stop crying." They do not say, "You should not feel this way." They simply sit beside the child. They offer warmth. They offer presence. They offer understanding. Perhaps this is how we need to treat our own hearts. Instead of becoming angry at ourselves for feeling hurt, we can learn to offer ourselves the same compassion we would give to someone we love. The next time sadness appears, perhaps you can pause for a moment. Take a slow breath. And quietly ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Not, how can I get rid of this feeling? Not, why am I still like this? Simply, what is my heart trying to tell me? Because emotions are not enemies. They are messages. They show us where we have been hurt. They show us what we deeply care about. They show us where we need more kindness. Imagine a glass of muddy water. If you keep shaking the glass, the water will never become clear. But if you place it down, if you allow it to become still, the mud slowly settles. The water begins to clear naturally. Our minds are often the same. When we constantly fight our thoughts, when we endlessly replay the past, when we keep asking why life should have been different, we create more suffering inside ourselves. But when we learn to become still, when we observe our thoughts without immediately believing every thought, something begins to change. The pain may still be there, but it no longer controls us in the same way. The wound may still exist, but it begins to heal. And perhaps one of the most powerful things you can do today is very simple. Stop being your own enemy. You have already carried enough. You have already survived moments you thought you could not survive. You have already made it through days that once felt impossible. So tonight, instead of judging yourself for where you are, offer yourself a little compassion. Place your hand over your heart. Take a breath. And remind yourself, I am still learning. I am still growing. I am still becoming. The path to peace is not about becoming a person who never experiences difficulty. It is about becoming a person who no longer abandons themselves when difficulty arrives. Because the person who learns to be kind to their own heart will discover a strength that no difficult season can take away. So if you are carrying pain today, if you are quietly wondering why life has been so difficult, I hope you remember this. Your suffering does not mean you are weak. Your struggles do not mean you have failed. And the difficult moments you are facing do not mean your story is over. Sometimes, the people who have suffered the most are also the people who learn the deepest compassion. The people who have known loss often become the ones who understand others. The people who have walked through darkness often become the ones who appreciate the light. Your pain has changed you. But it does not have to destroy you. Perhaps today, you do not need to find all the answers. Perhaps you do not need to fix everything at once. Perhaps the first step is simply to stop fighting yourself. Give yourself one quiet moment. Take a slow breath. And ask, can I meet myself with the same kindness I would give to someone I love? Maybe healing begins there. Not with a perfect life. Not with a life without challenges. But with a heart that learns how to remain peaceful even when life is changing. Remember, a storm does not mean the sky has disappeared. The clouds may cover the sunlight for a while, but behind those clouds, the sky is still there. And within you, beneath all the fear, disappointment, and pain you have carried, there is still a place of peace waiting to be remembered. If these words brought you even a small moment of comfort today, know that you are not walking this journey alone. There are many hearts around the world learning the same lesson. That suffering is not the end of our story. Sometimes, it is the beginning of a deeper understanding. May you be gentle with yourself. May you find peace in the moments you cannot change. And may you discover that even after the hardest seasons of life, something beautiful can still grow.